Hey everyone, we're on the middle of the road. We're on the halfway point for Neon Genesis Evangelion. And what if I was to tell you that the 13th episode has the introduction of the 11th angel? It has an angel fight, but neither the EVA units are used nor the children. The main character is actually a background character by the name of Ritsuko Akagi. Now Ritsuko Akagi is going to take center stage in this episode because, as we find out during the course of it, and we'll get into a lot of it, she's very important to the Nerve Project. We find out everyone, by the end of the series, we find out everyone more or less who's important to what the Avas are doing are connected either by blood, by a relationship, or by something that's not, by accident. The first part of this episode, the Japanese first introduction, is called an angel invasion. An angel invasion starts out kind of weird because we see Maya having a conversation with Ritsuko Akagi. Now, the reason it can be weird, especially once you watch the series the first time through, at first it just sounds like a mentor teaching a student. When we get to some of the more heavier issues later on in the episodes, and even in the movies, we find out this kind of relationship is very odd, or it was odd at the time when it came out in the late 90s. Basically, what's happening in the first part of this episode is that they're doing a new Ava experiment, and it's an experiment where they want to see how the children can sync up with the units, or the test units, without any clothes on. Of course, this leads to Asuka giving some pretty good lines about, "You perverts, you just want to see me naked." And whatever, they do the test. Now, as the test happened, we find out that there's a bacteria in the water, or in the walls holding it. And what happens is, at one point, Rei is in an angel, or in a dummy suit, which that will be important because they do mention in this episode that we're testing you for a dummy decoy system, which once again come into fruition later on in the show. The smallest details are often dropped in this show and paid off later on. You just kind of have to put one and one together. So we get a scene where the bacteria starts to corrode into the walls, into the water, and it actually takes over one of the dummy units that Rei happens to be using. This is actually pretty important because not only does Rei act the same way during the flashback scene of before the show started, where her unit went berserker mode and started crashing against the glass. It's pretty important because of the reaction. Remember in that episode, if you really look at it and you go back on it, you don't know who the unit's trying to attack. This kind of paramounts that, but it paramounts it without Gendo in the room. Ritsuko's there. And as she sees the glass start to break, because she's in the room that is watching this live, she doesn't move. Because it's more or less a reenactment of the other scene earlier, from when Unit 0 went berserk. That's kind of interesting because Masato has to take her and, you know, say, we got to get the hell out of here. So as they try to figure out ways to, you know, destroy this bacteria, they eventually find out that it is an angel, and it is the 11th angel. There is another interesting scene where it's a very small scene, but it has a lot of importance, where we see Kaji. This is the only time we see Kaji in the episode. He's on an elevator. He goes, oh, it's time to get out of here. We have no idea what he's doing, and we have no idea why he was there or what was that scene about. It at first can kind of seem like a red herring, but at the same time, once again, this leads to what he's doing later on in the show. The episode more or less ends with the children being ejected from their suits in the plugs and being thrown into the ocean. The angel is steadily taking over and deciding that it wants to blow up Nerve, and ends with a pretty good question by Professor Fuyutsuki's: how are we going to destroy an angel without the Evas? Good question. So we get to the midway point of this episode, and it's called, and I'm going to butcher the first part of its name, so excuse me for my garishness in this. It's called the Lilliputian Hitcher, I think. So this is the second part of episode 13. Okay, this episode is heavily in techno-babble. You know, they're trying to figure out to destroy what they thought was originally a bacteria that turns into a microorganism. I believe they call it a not a microbot, but something very similar to it. We get a very long, drawn-out conversation. Not really drawn out, it's really rapid, and it moves at a brisk pace, where Gendo's like, how are we going to destroy this? Ritsuko comes out with an idea. I will save the whole thing with Ritsuko and Masato to the end, so to just keep it with that. But Ritsuko comes out with an idea, and they all go, oh, alright, this is an angel that is steadily evolving. It started out as a bacteria, it's moving to a microorganism. Because of its interaction with the water and the walls and the electronics, it's turned into a micro thingy or another. And they find out that it's quickly evolving. And actually, one of the most important parts of this episode, the whole episode, is that we find out a lot about the Magi system. We find out the Magi system, it was created by Ritsuko's mom, and we get a long backstory about how the Magi system, actually it was hinted at in an earlier episode how the Magi system actually runs it. I believe it was in the episode, yeah, it was at the beginning of the episode, the data Tokyo 3 stood still. So we learn about that, but now we're getting into the intricacies of the Magi system. They're named after the three wise men, Caspiar, Balthazar, and Malpazar. And if you don't know that there's symbolism, especially religious symbolism in this show, you have not been paying attention. So we find out that Ritsuko's mom is the one who basically developed it and came up with it. So she decides, and actually a pretty boardroom scene, you know, Masato's, as to why Masato doesn't know this is kind of a strong, like, that makes no sense in this episode, since she and Ritsuko have known each other for a while. Why wouldn't she know that? And her dad was part of a research committee that started, you know, Gurren, which was the precursor to Seele. We'll get to that later. And Nerve. Why wouldn't she know this information? But we also have to realize that Masato's left in the dark about a lot of the things here. So Ritsuko goes, oh, I'm going to take this over. I know how to defeat this angel. And basically what she's going to do is she's going to de-evolve the angel, basically by using hack codes and putting a virus as the 11th angel tries to take over all three Magi systems. Now in this episode we also learn they go into one of the last Magi system, and you see a basic I guess IT room with all these notes and pads, and Maya and Ritsuko seeing and go like, wow, these tell us how everything works in detail. And Ritsuko makes a pass that, yeah, this is a creation from my mother, and this is all her notes that she happens to leave inside of the system, which is kind of a weird thing. But we also get to an interesting pan where you see all the notes strolled upon all the cords, all the cables and everything. There's a big, sentence that says, "Akari, you jerk," which was written by Ritsuko's mom. And we'll find out about that a little bit later. They explain how the Magi system works, being that it's, kind of people transplanting their minds or their thoughts into minds, which is why when they actually hack into the Magi system, it looks like a neural system, and it actually looks like they're plugging their things into an actual brain. So we finally get to the end of the episode, and of course the good guys win because we're halfway through the series. We still got 13 more episodes to go. And Ritsuko starts to talk. This is where I kind of have an issue with this episode, is because a lot of this episode is Ritsuko explaining things that Masato should know. And while it's not exposition dump for the most part, it is character dump for the most part. It's not done like the way other character developments are, where, you'll get flashbacks here and there and no one really talks about it. This one, Ritsuko straight up explains what the Magi system is, how it works, the relationship between the Magi system and her mom. And she's doing all this to Masato, who, Masato should kind of know a lot of this. I get why she doesn't, because at the beginning of episode 1, we're introduced to the fact that Masato just got there. I believe she was in Germany with Asuka, because in Asuka's introduction to Asuka Strikes, she mentions that. But it is a nice character moment. We are fleshing out a character who will be more important later on in the show, and happens to be, kind of not background fodder in the series going into the halfway point, but we don't realize her importance. And this episode really hammers home how important she is and how important she will be, and we'll see a lot of that. Episode kind of ends with Ritsuko explaining a lot of that, and even explaining how her relationship with her mom will affect her, and is affecting her, and how she doesn't think that she can do certain things her mom does. Non-spoiler, so I'm not going to get into that. But that's kind of this episode. We get an angel that appears that we never really see. We get an angel fight that's just really techno jargon, or techno babble, depending on how you look at it, whether any of the science of this is correct. I'm not getting into. But that's kind of this episode. It is nice once again to get focused on background characters while still doing the live setting, or doing the show service without stopping it to a dead halt. But you kind of feel disappointed in the fact that you didn't see an actual angel fight. But at the same time, this show is about to subverge expectations, especially going forward. We're going to have episode 14 left, and it's an anime, so we're just past the halfway point, so you know what that means. Well, pretty much that and every other anime, or even children's cartoon show, we're getting a flashback episode, a callback episode, a recap episode. So we got that for episode 14. Let's see how this is different. That'll probably be a lot shorter show than this one. I definitely would say this isn't one of the stronger ones in the first half, but it definitely does flush out, and it does, once again, like everything else in the show, will be followed up in the second half. So that's all for now. Until then, everyone have a good night and peace.